Hi, welcome to Math Unleashed podcast. We are super excited to have a conversation with one of the industry leaders in AI, artificial intelligence, and life sciences. He is none other than Dr. J. Sai Ramesh. He's a co-founder and CEO of CapsicoHealth. We would love to learn as much as possible from you, through you, about what's happening in the AI world. First of all, let's start with your career and some key moments of your journey, specifically from IBM to now, where you are, some key moments.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kiran, and thank you for the podcast. Firstly, I want to go even a little bit before I joined IBM. So my former advisor, Dr. Yakam, he's a professor. He really got me into thinking about how do we combine concepts from nature, from science, and computer science, and to solve real-world problems. That's my first entry into AI. So in fact, because of him, I started thinking about how do we bring different concepts, different things at different points in time. So I did my PhD in economics and computer science, and to really bring new ideas, new concepts, including looking at nature-inspired methods to solve distributed systems problems, which are right now cloud-based problems. And so that got me into IBM research. So I was one of the first employees really focused on artificial life in almost 25 years back. So I was looking at how do you really bring AI to solve simulation methods, AI to look at large-scale systems and complexity, AI to also look at healthcare problems as well. So my entry into AI was really driven by my PhD, then went into IBM to really start looking into how do I really make it useful and exciting. So we built a lot of interesting systems, mainly simulation. It was those days when AI was sort of just the beginning. And so it was our first entry into how do we bring new ways of looking at agent technologies. In fact, agents were very big in those days, 25 years back. And in fact, this back again right now. So we built a lot of agent-based systems. We actually did simulations. We actually built autonomous systems. But then we couldn't really sort of make it available to the public. So that sort of started getting me to thinking, how do I bridge different concepts to solve real-world issues?
Got it.
So healthcare obviously was the first topic. So fast forward, I spent 14 years at IBM Watson Research, trying different kinds of things, including manufacturing, e-commerce, and things like that. Then when I decided to leave IBM with a few of our colleagues, I joined, formed partnership with UC Berkeley to say, can we begin to use AI concepts in healthcare? So we started this work in 2008. In fact, we are the first company in 2008 beginning to look at AI in healthcare. We call the company 360 Fresh. So our goal was to figure out, can we use medical record data and apply natural language processing techniques to analyze a lot of records to figure out which patients are getting the best treatment and actually why they're dropping off treatment. We looked at oncology and then applied to readmissions in hospitals. So that became a very interesting problem to solve. So in fact, our first entry into that. So we spent 5 years running that company, but a lot of the knowledge comes from 15, 20 years back as to what we did. So we built our first company on that. We promoted AI quite a bit in 2010, 2011, 2012. Nobody really understood what we're doing. They thought we were far ahead. But the good news was we actually solved some important problems related to identifying which patients are at risk for hospitals and would it impact the day-to-day sort of care. At the same time, would also impact the reimbursement. Fortunately, we sold that company to a very interesting parent company. And so that was the first time we really discovered that, yes, there's a value to applying automated techniques and AI techniques. We call it obviously automated techniques in those days. And we risk stratified patient populations. So that really got me into that. So we spent some time trying to figure out, can we then go and expand the work of AI and not just looking at a small data set or a specific patient population, or something much larger. So that's where we started getting into healthcare in a broader section, including life sciences. So we touched value-based care. We touched how do we actually improve treatments, improve diagnostics. So it's an interesting journey that I had, starting from my PhD days, and I have to thank my advisor for that, all the way down to where we are right now.
Very nice, very nice. And fascinating, as you said, right, the things that you think as old are new again, now the agentic thing and all.
That's right.
And it's super cool to really come with that kind of a subjective knowledge, and you're taking it to the application in the new world, real world problems, right? Let's talk about CapsicoHealth,
Sure.
real world intelligence.
Right.
Help us understand what is real world intelligence and what kind of solutions that you guys are, that you're trying to push the envelope through CapsicoHealth.
Absolutely. So going back again, our first company was trying to look at identifying patients who needed more care in the hospitals. We applied AI techniques. So that got us thinking about, can we make it more broader? So then came CapsicoHealth. Can we create a model or a methodology to look at broad collections of patient populations, not just in the hospital, but also patients who live at home, patients who go to nursing homes, and patients who have the entire history captured. Can we then figure out what kind of value is being delivered to the patients? So Capsico was formed in 2016, where we said, okay, let's start examining what value are we delivering as a healthcare system to patients, and can we model that value? Can we also look at how would we help certain patient populations do better? And so we started exploring large-scale data sets. And so when you say real world, our goal is to get real world data in real time with at most maybe a few days of delay, which included medical records and claims and so on and so forth. And so our goal was, can we go from real world data, apply AI, and then build a real world intelligence platform that will be useful for life science companies and hospitals interested in patient journeys, interested in patient care, interested in looking at outcomes, interested in looking at payment models. So can we then look at AI broadly, covering longitudinal data sets for patients? So that's really what got us into looking at CapsicoHealth, where we started off something small, but it became something bigger. Clearly now there are about over 1,000 use cases for AI. We only touch maybe 10 of them, right? That improves life science industries in terms of efficiency, in terms of identifying certain things, or potentially improving care as well for hospitals as well. So that's sort of how we put this together.
I'd love to come on the AI side and the Gen AI side, what's happening. But before that, so in the next 5 years, what are the set of moonshots or the vision that you guys inside CapsicoHealth are trying to solve or trying to achieve in your space, basically?
So I think, let's go back to the question, right? So when we didn't have enough compute power, we only had limited options as to what we could do with technology. Once we started getting more compute power, especially with the latest technology from NVIDIA and so on and so forth, we could do a lot more things. So one of the biggest things where I see AI applying is to really help doctors with diagnosis, looking at images, looking at genomic data sets, improving the speed of diagnosis and eventually accuracy. So the idea is to help them, in terms of day-to-day activities, right? So the doctors don't have to spend too much time looking at records, but actually would let the AI system give them advice. And they can use that advice or not use advice and then decide how to give care to the patient. That's one. The second biggest area, which I think is going to be the future explosion in the next 5 years, is precision medicine, which is all of us are different. We all need different kinds of treatments. So can AI help figure out what's the right treatment for us? And can patients get a list of options? And can we also figure out that this particular drug is going to work for me or not work for me? So that's going to be the holy grail in what we call as, in terms of identifying the best possible care and best possible treatment for patients. So I think precision medicine will demand a lot of AI. It'll demand that AI look at thousands and thousands of options over trillions of records and then figure out what's the best possible option for a patient in a matter of seconds. That way, you actually have the best possible care given to the patient at the right time. So we think that's the future. We also see huge potential in simplifying the day-to-day operational efficiency issues, improve documentation analysis, even analyze medical records. So I think that's going to be another big push over the next 5 years. So we see everything from diagnostics to precision treatment and care to improving operational efficiency. So we see all of this happening. Over time, I think all aspects of healthcare are going to be impacted. I think AI is really pushing us to rethink everything. And going back to my former advisor's advice, which is let's think out of the box. So I think AI is making us think out of the box. And I think there's going to be a revolution happening in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We just started seeing that.
Sure, got it. So now let's get into that AI side of things. So can you help us understand the lay of the land from your perspective on what's happening, what has happened and what's happening, and where is this going to go in terms of disruptions that the new Gen AI is creating? I would love to understand your perspective, definitely on the healthcare side, but even if it's a broader thing, would love to understand.
Absolutely. So till 2-3 years back, people just knew that AI was more about machine learning, statistical analysis. You predict certain outcomes or predict maybe multiple outcomes in healthcare and life sciences. It was more predictive, more statistical. But with the generative AI coming in, I think it's opened up a whole new world of things, which is you're using knowledge models that actually represent how certain words can be put together, or you can actually predict the future sentence or a future paragraph, or you combine trillions of words that come together and actually give you an interesting view into the future expected sort of write-up. So that's what caused, in my view, the chatbots to come out, document analysis to come out. So I think there's a whole new world that we haven't really explored. Of course, this is still very early stages. There's clearly a lot of hallucinations. There's a lot of errors being created, but it's also opening up a whole new way of looking at things, where you mishmash text along with images, along with video, which is unusual to think about it. So clearly the application is not fully there yet. The best application right now is I want to ask a question, let's say in a chatbot, I get some nice answers, there's a good foundation model supporting it. But clearly there's a lot of interest in, can I summarize thousands of documents in a matter of seconds? A human will take maybe 10 days to analyze those 1,000 documents. You'll get back an answer in milliseconds, which is actually fantastic. So I think there's going to be different levels of innovation happening. One is the foundation model, which you've seen right now. But people are beginning to build apps. These apps have to address healthcare needs, life science needs. Most of the apps are coming in the administrative side, operational side, supply chain side, less in the clinical side. So that requires a lot of review, ensure that there's no errors, ensure that everybody's happy with it. And clearly there's a lot of work to be done there. So I would say that there's a lot of governance that has to come into place. So you can't expect AI to magically solve every problem.
Exactly.
So I think we need to be sort of careful in saying that yes, the interesting applications, very exciting, very entertaining. We also use it quite a bit. But the goal is, can we then slowly get into the real guts of patient care with generative AI? I've actually given keynote talks where I said there's a lot of value in what we see. But the use cases are actually minimal that actually are working right now. Even though there's 1,000 use cases being given by various groups out there, what really works is maybe 3 or 4 use cases. And those are still going through testing. So we still have a long way to go before we prove it out.
Got it.
But there's a lot of excitement, right? So you actually already see it happening. So in my view, it's everything from the diagnostics to potentially patients getting support from chatbots. And then hopefully it's going to lead into more advanced robotics. I think that's going to be the future. I look at not just the current systems, but robotic systems actually would have embedded AI, they'll have embedded models, language models, they'll be able to do a lot of interesting stuff. There's a lot of small footprint models coming out, and I think it'll be a potential for future growth there.
Absolutely.
So we think that's a multi-trillion-dollar industry that's just waiting to be unleashed in this space. So that's sort of my view of what the next 5 years are going to be like.
Nice. I want to shift gears and let's try to understand Dr. Ramesh as a serial entrepreneur. Your advice or your observations that you're seeing on the Indian ecosystem, the startup ecosystem.
Right.
So what are the things that you're seeing that people are solving, the kind of problem that they're solving? Are they doing the right things? What are the, if you're talking to a startup founder, if you're trying to guide them, so what are the set of things that you want them to not do versus to do? Using, of course, using Gen AI and all these pieces, but somewhere there should be a value creation, right? So your perspective on how things are going.
No, absolutely. So we're currently based in California, right? And we have an office in Ireland as well. We're also working on projects in Europe on both AI and Gen AI, which is sort of the old AI versus the new AI. We started coming to India the last 3-4 years, and we started talking to various hospitals, including insurance businesses. I think India is still not fully ready yet. A lot of excitement, a lot of interesting use cases. They're beginning to think about how to organize it. So the fundamental problem we're trying to solve is not just the AI part, which is, do you have the data? So data is not well organized. So if you're a startup that you're trying to get into healthcare or life sciences, first question you're going to ask is, where's my data? Is it public data? Is it private data? Is it enterprise data? So if you don't have the data organized, you can only build a certain level of modeling and sort of improve the value you're going to offer, right? So I think that has to be solved first. The second that's solved is that, can the data be generalized? So I can actually train my models appropriately, reduce bias, which is the important part of it. And then as a startup founder, I have to see if my models are going to be of value to either enterprises like the health sciences or potentially hospitals. So I think startups have to really think hard about, do we have the data? Do we know actually what we can do with it? Would we build an app that will be useful? So I think all of those things have to be touched on. In my view, there's a lot of application that will be high value, especially the diagnostic side and treatment side. That's going to take another few years before you get permissions. And I think India is still going through that phase of trying to get the data organized. If you get the data organized with potential privacy and other sort of boundaries taken care of properly, it'll open up a lot of innovation. Right? Clearly, you can use external data to prove certain things, but there's only so much you can do with it. Right? So I think there's a lot of back and forth that has to happen over the next 3-4 years. And we started doing some pilots in India. We discovered that the data is not necessarily fully there yet. We have to organize it really well. And also the data is potentially not shareable. You can't really test a lot of things. So you have to build models that actually align with the needs of the providers and also life sciences. So I think if you go back to life science history and also hospital industry, they have the data, which is pretty rich, very useful. But how do you tap into it? How do you use it? How do you actually make sense out of it? That's going to be another 3-4 years to go. So I think there's a lot of excitement in AI. I think we should all be doing a lot of good things with it. But I think we still have some fundamental issues to solve. I said everything from privacy, security, who can access it, do we have the infrastructure in place? I think that's a big topic right now in terms of how AI can really make an impact.
Got it. So now let's take a, because now you're seeing from across country observations, right? Is India ready, or what does it take for India to be ready? Again, there's an India and there's Bharat.
Right.
So healthcare AI, if it has to get to that bottom level of the whole masses, what are the things that needs to happen at a government level or at a industry level, academia level, from your perspective?
Right. So again, I'm going back to my, when I did my research. So I think India is ready to really unleash AI models and really to push the boundaries. They're ready from the point of view of the innovation, interest, the push, the excitement. But they're not ready when it comes to infrastructure. That needs to be really organized. Right now, it's really large corporations that actually have the infrastructure that can actually test models. Like, for example, the big 5 cloud companies, the big 5 tech companies, they have infrastructure. So I think India has to somehow find a way to build infrastructure that allow entrepreneurs to be able to use that infrastructure in a smart way. And that's going to be important. And we're noticing obviously other countries doing that. They begin to buy a lot of GPUs, build infrastructure, make it happen. I think India has to go that route. The moment you have good infrastructure, right, whether it's roads, whether it's railway tracks, you unleash innovation. I think, in my view, India is also ready for 2 reasons. One is, it's not just in terms of concepts, right, in terms of the excitement to unleash. They also have knowledge that is built out from a payment network. They're one of the best payment networks that actually got innovation to come out into the world and allowed everybody to be able to do things. I think they have to find a way to create that innovation where somebody gets access to data and builds a model with very minimal effort. If they can cut the cost of doing that, then we'll have a lot of interesting models for every domain within India. So I think they should learn from the payment network methodology, and then also use the enthusiasm they currently have in terms of pushing the interest in AI, and also clearly investment. I think the question is it currently it's less than 1%. Sure. They should definitely go way beyond that to be able to solve so many issues. It's the next future, right? We've gone through multiple phases in terms of industrialization, manufacturing. Now it's the information industry, and now it's the AI industry. So clearly robotics, automation, automated processes, applies to healthcare and life sciences, and eventually organizing data. That's a big deal.
Got it.
So I would look at it as, yes, they're ready, but they're ready at least from the first step. But they have a long way to go to really unleash the potential and make it happen. Right? They have to make it happen.
Sure.
If they don't think about it, then it's going to be hard for them to make it happen.
Right.
And they're going to obviously lose out in the industry if they don't really put their foot forward and say, okay, we need to have everything in place to get moving.
Got it. So as a startup ecosystem, so when we are trying to solve something for healthcare, so what are your observations and suggestions on building from India for India, or building from India for Western countries, building from India for third world countries as a market? So most of the times the Western world is very crowded, but everybody is going there because data is, as you said, data is there, privacy policies are set, versus other things. So when you look at a ecosystem from a startup's point of view, where do you think, specifically from the founders, startup ecosystem from India who are working on solving the medical healthcare side of things, where do you think they should be focusing on, or if they're focusing on Western, what pitfalls should they not be doing? Should they be avoiding?
No, I think that's a very good question. India first should build for themselves first, right? To be able to test the models within their ecosystem. That includes multi-language, multimodal data sets, and use those to really solve problems here. Clearly, once you solve problems here, you could actually export those out, because I don't think there's any other country in the world that has so many languages. And so clearly there's a language analysis that has to be done. And also there's different kinds of problems to solve. Everything from how do you allocate resources to agriculture, to transport, to healthcare, life sciences. I think those things have to be solved. And once you solve it locally, it becomes easy for you to export it out. But I think if you have an export mentality from day one, then you're solving somebody else's problems using your current infrastructure, which I think is an interesting problem to solve, but it's something you have to think about very carefully. In my view, I think the export mentality should be seen as a next step, but first get your bearings right, first get your data right, first get your infrastructure right, and that'll help you start solving problems all over the place, right? And I think there's so many things to solve here, which is why we came from California to actually look at problems here, because we think there's a lot of variety. It's very diverse, it's very interesting, and the data should capture that, right? And can we combine not just data in healthcare, but also combine data from satellite imagery, data from pollution levels, weather, climate, that actually has a big impact on patient care, impact on how you handle prevention, and also at the same time also life sciences as well. So I think that's a big opportunity.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. Let's shift gears now. Let's go to the ethical considerations on healthcare, the bias, the things that are going on. So what's your opinion on that, and how do we mitigate that? How do we figure out? We need to do the right things, but we need to do the right things in the right way.
That's right. It's a very good question. So going back to ethics, I think every time there's new technology, we're hoping that's going to actually help solve everything from equity to done it the right way. I think with AI, there's a lot of promise. There's also a lot of demands on it to be able to solve the equity issues, at the same time also solve ethics issues. And the question is do we have the necessary methodology in place to drive ethics? So clearly, if you're running a model and your model is biased, then you have to examine and see, can I test the model differently? Can I probe the model? Can I simulate certain variations of the model? Can I really, make sure that the model is very robust? I think that is yet to be done. And especially in healthcare, there's a lot of gender bias, there's a lot of race bias. You have to find a way to, leverage that information properly in your modeling. Clearly, there's no one model that's going to solve this problem, right? You have to find the right approach in place, which is why you have ethics committees. They review the study trials, the clinical trials. They review everything to be able to say, do you have the right balance? So that's a very complex topic, and hopefully that'll get solved in India and other places as well. Right now, it's not been solved anywhere, right? Clearly, there's a lot of bias depending on the region, the locality, depending on what you're trying to solve. And so there's obviously well-known cases where digital health wearable tools apply well for certain patient populations, but not necessarily others. Just because of the skin tone or whatever it is, you have different results. So there's obviously well-published studies in that. So the question is, can you then go back and learn from that and rebuild your analysis and methodology and your models, right? And so that's yet to be done. In my view, I think everybody has to step back a little bit and look at how the modeling is done. Look at the data sets. As I mentioned, going back to data again, if the data is not accurate, not useful, then you'll build very biased models. So is the data really balanced? That's a very important point to consider. So I think that's I would say the key thing to consider is, do we have the right data, the right process, and eventually that's going to help us solve the ethics issues.
Got it. Drug discovery, clinical trials, age-old problems, age-old things. So help us. Show us the lay of the land on how is AI being used and what kind of disruptions are happening that we can foresee in both of those areas.
So I think I love life sciences. It's a great area. I love healthcare, great area. I think there's a lot more innovation happening now in the drug discovery side. So clearly, in the past, you have to run through a lab test or a lab-based modeling, and understand how to discover drugs and proteins and things like that. But I think there's a lot of new innovation happening where you actually can simulate the drug, try trillions of different combinations. And the goal would there be to actually run those trials in those simulations. That actually eliminates the need for, in some sense, mouse-based trials. We're actually using the mice to be able to run your experiments and things like that. So in my view, I would see that modeling at the cell level is coming up. Highly innovative new solutions are coming up. We can model a single cell or model multiple cells. And so drug discovery is going to go in that route to be able to do in silico modeling, it's called, in silico methodology. And so a lot of AI applications there, huge promise. If that can be done right, it's going to cut down the costs of drug manufacturing and drug discovery and manufacturing by several billion per year across the globe. In fact, every drug that you produce costs a few billion to be able to discover it, to be able to go through the trials and so on and so forth. That'll be easily cut by a certain percentage, which will be pretty substantial. And I think that's the value where AI brings in on the drug discovery side. Then comes the part where we're going to run clinical trials, which is the next part of it. So can you identify patient populations quickly from a large data set? And that's where we come in with our real world data that gives insight into, okay, here are certain patients that potentially you could be looking at. So can we speed up the trials process? Can we identify the patients better? Can we actually predict who might continue the trial for long periods of time? Because a lot of times trials, you see them fall apart because patients drop out. Can we learn from the past? So that information we can capture. So we have lots of data sets that can give good information on that. Then comes the part of once you really finish your trials and you got approval to be able to take the drug into the market, now you have to worry about, okay, I have 24 months to go. Am I ready to launch the drug? Am I ready to get it into the market? Am I a second mover instead of being a first mover? Do I know who my patients are? So that information about patient journeys and understanding the patient is very, very important. So in my view, a lot of AI is going to come in to understand those patient populations and to be able to figure out how would your new drug enter the market, what are the diagnosis indications, and how would I actually get the drug in the hands of patients. A lot of interest in identifying who those patients are. That should benefit more. A lot of times physicians would have to learn about it. They'll figure out, okay, maybe I like my current way of doing things. I don't want to get a new drug into the market. So a lot of discussion happening right now. So I see potential for AI helping in the market access, in the adoption of the drug, eventually monitoring side effects. That's the biggest issue, right? Obviously, if the drug doesn't do well, and the patient don't get the best results, it's not going to do well in the market, right? We know that close to 40% of drugs that are released in the market don't actually reach the potential. That's a huge loss of money. In the end, we as a consumer end up paying for the cost of the trials, cost of the drugs, in other means, and obviously the cost of the actual treatment as well. So that's a big issue there. So in the life science cycle, there's a lot of value there. In the healthcare side, which is another big topic, I think ensuring that the patients are able to get the best possible treatment when they come in. What are the options? It's very important. It also involves risk stratification, risk analysis, where AI can play a very important role. Second thing is patients sometimes drop off treatment. You want hospitals to know way before they drop off, why they're dropping off. Is it because of treatment? Is it because it's too complicated? Is it too expensive? In the US, it's about copay. So can you look at that information very carefully and help the patient go through their treatment pathways or the treatment care? So I think that's a lot of value there, where AI can come in and help us understand the costs, understand pathways, and so on and so forth. So again, hospitals can benefit, and I think they're already doing that. They're already seeing the value in some sense, and it's still very early stage. But I see a future where healthcare and pharma would really benefit a lot with a lot of AI applications. So I think modeling at the patient level, from a healthcare point of view, modeling at the cell level, from a drug discovery point of view, these are all the huge potential opportunities going forward.
So we covered the supply side of healthcare.
Right.
Now let's talk something on the demand side, the patient side of things. Say, you mentioned precision, personalization. So the new buzzword is hyper-personalization, right? So what are the 4-5 trends that you're seeing that's going to happen because of the convergence of all these things to a patient in terms of his or her health?
Right. That's a good point. So I think with the chat applications coming out, and not naming any specific application, but it's really empowered the consumer, right? Consumer can ask questions, they can verify, are they getting the right treatments? They can ask questions about specific medications, certain drugs, also look at information about their own diagnosis. So there's a lot of interesting consumer value that's coming in. In addition, consumers can get potentially a chat bot that's giving them advice on certain things, right? And of course, this is a little bit tricky and scary, but it's also very interesting. So if the chatbot is approved by agencies, and if that's value, so potentially it can help consumer quite a bit. So I think there's a lot of value there, right there, in terms of consumers getting more knowledge about healthcare. As of now, right before all of this came out, we didn't really understand what's going on, right? You had to open up books, maybe ask the doctor for information. Doctors are busy, they don't have enough time, or you get some pamphlet about a specific treatment. But now you have an option to do this really electronically in real time on your mobile phone. That's a huge power. So the consumer has gotten now more power to be able to look at things. And they can eventually, the goal will be to give them better insight into treatment options. So that is still a big topic. Hospitals have to do that, and they have to go through a process. Same with life science companies. You see a lot of them advertising about latest medications and value to consumers. So I think the consumer is going to get a lot more insight. And that's a big value add. And I think going forward, I would see many applications coming forward. And in terms of non-clinical applications, things like handling payment, right? Can I track my payments? Do I know how much I've spent? At least in the US, it's a big topic. I'm sure here too. I think those apps have to come in. So just as the way I'm able to buy consumer goods, when I get a service, can I actually be able to track my payments that I made for everything from medications to going to the doctor to taking the car to the doctor, whatever it is, right? So I think the payments also going to have a big revolution in that space too. So combining the chat-based applications with payment applications with consumer-friendly application, that'll be actually the future going forward. And I think the consumer should be excited about it. But the question is, can we get startups and others to really drive that? So that's a big topic.
Got it. So health tech now, one of the bigger industries is in insurance.
Right.
So of course, insurance is part of your. In third world country, it's a little different versus in. So will this new era of AI and the new era of personalization, will it have any kind of a disruption in the industry per se as an industry, insurance as an industry, and how does it help the end user as an end customer? Will it make it more easier, more faster, or is it going to make it more costlier as a services?
I know this is a big question. This is not an easy question to answer.
Sure.
Because we all want our costs to go down every month. We want the cost per month in terms of insurance payments, costs for drugs to go down. But they don't seem to be going down. They seem to be going up.
Going up.
So we don't know if AI is going to help there.
Yeah.
We're hoping that AI can help there. So why they're going up? Because it's, again, cost of medicines, cost of discovered medicines, cost of procedures, obviously inflation, other geopolitical factors playing a role. So it's not very clear that it's going to help us that easily.
Yeah.
But of course, clearly insurance business are looking at AI from everything from analyzing the medical claims to identifying best ways to recommend services to consumers, finding ways to reduce fraud and waste. That's a big topic on the insurance side, where AI can play a very important role, right? And so that's an important topic. So in my view, there's clearly maybe a few hundred applications on the insurance side. But as a consumer, I think nobody's yet figured out a way to cut our costs. So our premiums are going up every month.
Yeah.
Our costs are going up every month. And we are seeing that this is not going to be that easy. So no matter where you are in the world, it's still a big issue to solve.
Correct.
So I'm not so sure if it's going to help, but the hope is that with AI, combined with better policy, we'll hopefully cut costs.
Right.
But in terms of application of insurance businesses, there's clearly a lot. There's going to be better applications on your mobile phone, fast ways to recommend specific services, better ways to get the best insurance policy. So there could obviously interesting applications right there that could come in. And so the question is, can we get this application in front of consumers very quickly?
Got it.
Yeah.
Dr. Ramesh, if I may, serial entrepreneur, of course, you have exited successfully. Would love to understand from your experience and from your journey, what are the 3 lessons that you've learned that you would have, if you had an opportunity to redo it, that you ensure that you follow those lessons? What are those 3 or 4 lessons that as a startup?
I mean, there are probably more lessons that I've learned. So firstly, if you're getting into healthcare, right, think twice. Because healthcare is a tough industry, very exciting, very interesting, very demanding. So as an entrepreneur, you really have to think about, do I have a problem I want to solve? Has somebody else solved it? Can I focus on it? And can I focus on it the next 3-4 years to get the best results? The moment you lose focus, then you end up basically trying to do something else.
Sure.
So identify why you're getting into healthcare, identify what problem you're trying to solve. Can I go deep into it? Can AI play a role in that? And you also need to figure out, do I have a good set of use cases, right? Is there somebody going to support me on those use cases? Right? Clearly, every startup founder wants to get funding.
Very important point, yes.
Right? If I don't have a use case, if I don't have the traction initially, I'm not going to get funding. Right? So clearly, that's an important thing to consider. The final sort of lesson I learned is that be prepared to fail, and be prepared to fail fast. And be also prepared to change your direction if you think you can't solve it. And how flexible are you?
I see.
The more flexible you are, the better it is. But also sometimes that'll get you out of focus. You have to obviously balance out. But identifying the problem, getting deep into scenarios is very important. But also you have to learn that things can go wrong. And you have to be very flexible in changing your direction and getting to do the best. So in fact, our current company, because of the changes in regulation, changes in how healthcare is done, we changed twice. We were working initially only in healthcare. We discovered that there's obviously reasons why we did that, because of trying to improve value-based care. But we have use cases in life sciences that all benefit. So the goal is, can we get those things in place? So we started looking at use cases across the board. So we can actually use the same platform to solve use cases and therefore get better traction in the market. And gives us a better understanding of what's happening in the market.
Got it. I have two more questions for you. Definitely on the startup side now, I'm sure you must have raised rounds, funding rounds. So what are the lessons that you have learned that you can impart, that you can tell the startup founders on the mistakes that startup founders should not do while they're raising rounds? That's one. And the second set of questions is when you're exiting. So what are the lessons what are the learnings that you have learned to do a successful exit? Not everything gets to an exit.
Right.
But it's come to an exit. It's definitely there's something that has worked out for you. If
That's
you have
right.
to summarize and put it as a lessons for us.
Perfect. I mean, as a startup founder, we all want to exit, but that shouldn't be the main goal.
Sure.
You want to solve the problem. You want to be able to find a way to, fund your activity. So clearly, I think if you don't have a good use case and a couple of good initial pilots that actually prove the use case, it's very hard to go get funding, for sure. Second thing is, if you can do more than that, get a paying customer and a paying client or a paying, activity where you actually get somebody to use your product and therefore you can get a good reference and they're paying you for it, that's even better. In fact, if you can push out as much as possible the need to get funding and build a self-sustaining model at a very low cost, then you start getting confidence that I can scale my business over time. So that's what we did. We actually didn't get funding in this current company. We used obviously non-dilutive funding from federal government in the US. We also looked at our own customer base. We said, look, we're doing some really good work and really good data sets. Can we leverage that? So we started focusing on, can we get the customer to use our products and then make sure that they're actually benefiting from it and we give them the best value and then they pay us for that. That way build a sustaining model. So our first business, we didn't raise any capital, even though we had the offers. We were able to sell the company within 5 years. In the second business, because of COVID, we went through ups and downs, but we were able to actually get a good customer base, a loyal customer base that uses our products. And we're able to now, our goal now is to go and raise a lot of capital if possible. But we already have over a dozen customers now using our products in both life science and healthcare. And we have probably about 50 pilots going on within our platform, which is SaaS-based. So clearly, we've shown that we can sustain and scale without getting any funding. As founders, we invested our own money into it as founding investors, but also as a way for us to really drive the thought process. So now we're ready to scale, ready to find the partners, ready to find the investors to be able to go to the next level. So we've done that on purpose so that we can push the boundaries of when you're going to ask for funding, as opposed to going and asking for funding without a proper use case and a proper client that's actually using the products. So that's a big, in my view, that's my personal sort of view into how a startup can really succeed. Of course, it takes time.
It takes time.
And the question is, can you do it fast? Right? And clearly, there's investment out there that actually would take an idea and go with it. But it's also a good way to test things out, especially in healthcare and life sciences. Right? There's a lot to be tested.
Right. So what are the 2 or 3 things that you're super excited or uncomfortably excited in your company, that in terms of the problems that you're trying to solve, in terms of the disruptions that you're trying to create in Capsico Health?
That's a good question, and I was hoping to answer this earlier. So far we've been applying AI to specific problems, specific use cases in healthcare and in life sciences. In healthcare, we looked at cardiology, oncology, looking at patient risk stratification, and looking at which patients actually are getting the best treatment, what the outcomes are. And in cardiology, looking at precision medicine for cardiology in healthcare. But in life sciences, we felt there's a lot more interesting sort of use cases. One of the use cases is, are we getting good insight from the drugs that are in the market in terms of patient outcomes, in terms of patient adverse events? Can we model the patient journeys? Can we look at which patients are benefiting or not benefiting? We also discovered that our data sets that we have, right, we want to be able to expand that quite a bit. We want to be able to get more data that we can actually use in a smart way to say that, guess what, certain patient population wouldn't benefit based on certain treatments. And we want to give that insight. I think I'm super excited about that, especially in oncology, in neuroscience, in cardiology, in GI. There's a lot of innovation happening, including inflammation. And I think we have really good data that actually can help us guide, in terms of how we can apply AI, and also help us with helping life science companies to get a deeper insight into these patient journeys and patient populations, so that they can use it for something else, right? The goal eventually would be that we would, benefit both from the insights that we get, and also from launching sort of new ways of utilizing data and AI for solving those problems that I just mentioned about. The second big thing I'm very excited about is that we spend billions of dollars in training models right now. These are AI models to be able to predict something or be able to actually discover the next document or predict the next document or things like that, or the next action. But nobody's spending any money. In fact, I would say more like closer to $0 in training people. So we think that there's a huge opportunity here to use the knowledge that we have, including best practices and scenarios, to train clinicians, to train IT staff, to train specialists in life sciences, to train market access specialists, and so on and so forth, so that actually they can start understanding why AI is important. So that skilling and training is completely right now zero. So we actually created a whole program within our own platform, which takes a small part of the data, and it actually creates a very interesting training program for anybody to learn about how is AI being applied, how is it being applied, what's the actual value, and how would you use it? Because we give them all kinds of AI tools, but we don't tell them actually how it operates. So this is a great chance for a lot of us to learn about all these tools, and also it empowers every employee in every enterprise to be able to learn about this stuff. So I think the training skilling, which is very hands-on, project-based, focus on specific scenarios, is actually value. So actually you would potentially learn by doing things, learn by running some pilots, and then you decide, well, guess what? I really understood now AI is being applied to solving my problem, whether it's drug discovery, whether it's simulations, whether it's clinical trials, whether it's market access, so on and so forth. So that's the second thing. The third big thing that I think I feel a lot of excitement about is how do we really exploit the large language models, but use the concepts to be able to get into modeling clinical pathways or patient pathways. So we launched a recent tool that actually, based on the initial condition of the patient, we can predict the entire pathway for the patient based on very proprietary data sets. So that pathway prediction is giving also good insights into what are the kind of options a patient might have based on historical data. So those are the three big things I see huge value in what we're doing. So clearly, we want to go from what we're doing now to really scaling our work by combining multiple data sets, by doing training and simulations, training and so on and so forth, skilling, and then getting into large scale sort of, I would say, pathway analysis. So those are the three big topics. I think there's huge potential for us to expand in those areas, and we see a lot of value across life sciences and healthcare, and clearly life science has a lot more interest in that space. And so our team is excited and we're pumped up, and we're a small team, but as entrepreneurs we obviously want to push the boundaries as much as possible. So I think it's a question of, as we learn about models, we also want to learn about how these models are operating. The explainability aspect is also very important in terms of our day-to-day activities. So I think those applications are something that we're building one by one. We're not trying to boil the ocean. We're trying to focus on a few scenarios in also a few disease areas like oncology, cardiology, neuroscience, GI, so on and so forth. Hopefully we'll get to the next step very soon, and we'll hopefully scale our company and be able to do the best we can for the industry. In the end, the patient matters.
Awesome.
Right? We want to be able to help the patient. Can we do the best we can to help the patient?
Wow.
That's it.
Wish you best of luck on this. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramesh. I really enjoyed the conversation.
No, thank you, Kiran, for asking some very tough questions. I think we're very excited about our future journey, and we look forward to potentially educating a lot of people on what we're doing, at the same time learning from others as to what we can do for them.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a wrap on our side. I hope you enjoy this podcast. We'd love to get more comments and observations from your side.